If we want to repeatedly execute something, then we are going to need this repetition statement. So under that, for loop is another repetition statement that you can use. So this is the syntax that we are going to use in PHP. With the flow chart, you can easily understand. Now first we start, and then the first thing that we do is the initialization part. Okay, we will first initialize our variable and then we check the condition. Okay, if that condition is true, it will straight away, before it does this increment part, it will check the condition and then straight away go inside of this loop and execute whatever the statements inside that loop, the body of the loop, and then it will increment this part. Then it will increment that, and after the increment, it will check the condition again. Okay, so until that condition gets false, it will continue to execute whatever the statement inside this body of the loop, and then once it's false, it will terminate the loop. So this is the execution method that the for loop is going to use. So you will understand this more clearly once we discuss a simple example. So I'm going to name this as for.php. I will say for, and then within brackets, you can provide the initialization part. So unlike in while loop or do while loop, if you take while loop, okay, here we had some kind of an variable that we have initialized on the first line. But in for loop, you have that option inside. So I'm going to say, let's take $x as our incrementing value. So I'm going to initialize it as $x equal 1. So I'm going to start this loop, assigning the $x as 1, and then the condition. So my condition would be $x less than or equal 10. And then I'm going to have the increment statement as well. So if I want to print from 1 to 10, I can say simply $x plus plus. So it will increment $x by 1. Then within brackets, we can just print this echo $x. And also, if I'm going to print it one after the other, concat this as well. You can write it like this also. So this is a simple for loop. Right, let's try to execute this one. So for that, first go to your browser and then type localhost / my folder name is php code / and then my file name is for loop.php. So it will print value 1 to 10. It will first initialize this value and then it will check the condition. So $x in the first iteration, $x is 1, and then it will check the condition $x, whether $x is less than or equal 10. Here say it's less than 10. So it will straight away execute this part, print whatever value inside $x, and then again come to the loop, and then from the second time onward, it will check the condition. What it does is it will increment $x and then again check the condition. So initially it was $x is 1, and then after increment $x becomes 2, and then again in the second loop it will check the condition $x is 2 now, so it's less than 10. Again print statement is going to be executed, and then again it will increment. So likewise the loop will continue until the condition becomes false. So that's how it's going to work. Let's say I want to write a program to find the factorial of a number. Let's try to write this using a for loop, right? So what is the factorial of a number? So as you all know, if I want to take factorial 5, okay, then we can say 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. Okay, you have to multiply it like this, right? So it will become 120. Factorial 5 is 120. So likewise, you can write any factorial taking this as an example, right? So how can we write a PHP program for this? Okay, so let's try to write it using this for loop. So first we will going to need a variable to hold the number that we want to find the factorial. So I'm going to say $num equal, let's say 5, and I will going to need some kind of a variable to accumulate that multiplying value. So I'm going to say $factorial, and I will say FAC. Initially we will have the value as 1. Okay, and then we can write our for this, right? For, and then let's first initialize the value. Let's take $x equal 1. So the initialization value now here, I'm going to start from 5, right? So it will going to be my $num value, right? So initialization value will be $num. The condition would be number 1. We will going to multiply, right? We will check whether $x is greater than 0. Now we are going to write these values from descending order, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if I'm going to write in that way, I'm going to have not an increment, but I need to decrement $x by 1, right, in each iteration. So this will going to be a condition, increment, and the initialization part in the for loop. And then what we will going to say, okay, I'm going to store each and every value in each iteration in this variable, right? $fact. So I'm going to say $FAC equal $FAC into $x. So what happens here is, now first initially $x is number 5, right? The number that we want to find the factorial, right? So $x becomes 5, and then check the condition. Yes, it's greater than 0. then it will come to this statement. That means 1 into 5. So $FAC becomes 5. And then it will decrement. So that $X becomes 4, right? And then again, we check whether 4 is greater than 0 years. Then it will again multiply the value that is inside $FAC with 4, right? That is 5 into 4. Then we will store that value again inside FAC. So likewise, it will going to have a mathematical operation like this. So in each iteration, it will multiply each value and store that value inside this $FAC. So finally, what we are going to do, we will print that value. Right? I'm going to say echo $FAC. So that will going to be our answer. Right? So I'm going to save this. So it will be 120. So the factorial 5 is 120, right? Let's try to change this into a different number, 8. Okay. How to find the factorial of a number. Okay. Now, so we, up to now, we completed the repetition statements also. That is while, do while, and for loop. The next thing is we need to discuss about the functions in PHP. It's type of a procedure or a routine. So the functions that we were using from the start of this session, that is the echo function. Okay, if you can remember, as I was explaining, this echo function, if you take, that is a built-in function in PHP. So if your program or code have a certain section that is used in several places repeatedly, okay, if a same set of operations is going to apply in several places repeatedly, then you can add that section inside a function, okay, so that we can reuse that part in a program in anywhere. So that reusability is an advantage of using a function. When you're using function, let's say I want to calculate the temperature of city. I'm going to calculate the temperature in Fahrenheit. Let's say in Colombo. So what we need to do is we need to multiply this from 1.8. This is the simple way. Okay. Then we need to add 32 to that. So this will going to be the equation for that. Right. So then I'm going to print echo the temperature. Okay. I'm going to print it like this. So again, I'm going to show another temperature of another city. Then again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's say Nuareli temperature in Fahrenheit in Nuareli. Okay, let's say 22. So I'm going to again do the same thing, right? This is the same equation. So this is it. I'm going to, because definitely there will be 2 temperatures, right? So I want to convert it into Fahrenheit and print. So let's first save this, and so it will print the temperature of Colombo in Fahrenheit is 86 and the temperature of Australia in Fahrenheit is 71.6. So these will be the values. So as you can see, now here it's the same equation, right? So we can write a common function for this, because this Celsius to Fahrenheit calculation, it has repeat in the program 2 times, right? Here and here as well. So we can include that part in a function. Let's try to write a common function for this. In PHP, in order to write a function, we use this keyword called function. This is the keyword to start a function. Now in Python, you have def, right? Def. Likewise, in PHP, we use this keyword function. And then you have to mention your function name. I will name this function as calculate 10. Okay, this is my function name. And then within brackets, you can pass the parameters. If you have parameters, you can pass any parameter. Of course, we are going to need a parameter for this function, right? So that will be the Celsius value, because we are going to convert the Celsius value into a Fahrenheit value. So we need to get the parameter, the temperature in Celsius. So I'm going to say this parameter as $Celsius, right? So within brackets, you can have your common operations here. So what we are going to be the common operation? That is, of course, the equation of the conversion, Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion equation, right? So we can say that is temperature in Fahrenheit equal. Now this is the temperature in Colombo, right? This is the temperature in England. This is the only value that we're going to change. This part is common in both the places, right? Part is common. So here we can say, okay, we are going to get the Celsius value. That is the value that we need here, $Celsius, right? Then this whole thing, I just copy it and paste it here. Whatever the Celsius value, we need to multiply it by this value and then add 32 to that. So that will going to be a temperature in Fahrenheit. And then the important thing is, it's not enough to write this equation or the common things. This function definitely need to have a return statement also. That is, whatever the thing that we have calculated, we have assigned that value to this variable, and then we need to return that variable, because in order to get something out of this function, we need to return that. So I'm going to say return, right? This is a keyword, return, and then our value, that is temp far. So how are we going to call this function? We can call this function like this. So now we are not going to need this part. Okay, we can say $Colombo parent. We can say the function name, that is calculate temp, and the parameter that we need to pass here is of the temperature Colombo, that is 30. Okay, that will going to be the parameter that's going to pass to this function. So here what it does is, it will call this function. If you mention it like this, it will check whether there is a function like this in the script. Yes, there is a function. Okay, and then it will pass this value as the parameter here, right? Then what happens? All these operations get executed and this function will return the results. So here it will going to take that value to this variable and then finally print that value. So here also we can change. Here also it's the same process, and then finally it will going to print. As a best practice, you can have some kind of a comment here explaining what this function does. Okay, you can also mention that this function actually accept this parameter. So this Celsius is some kind of an integer value, right? So we have provide some kind of a description to this function. Okay, this function, what it does is it will calculate temperature in Fahrenheit. Then it will going to accept a parameter that is an integer value. Anyone who is referring to this code can clearly understand what this function does. Okay, that's for the clarity of the code. So I'm going to save this and let's try to run this script. I just need to refresh this. So it will not going to change. It will going to provide the same output. Okay, let's say not this example. Let's say in a certain another example, you had your own equation, right? And you write a function like this. And in any case, if some kind of a value change was there, then simply you need to change in your function only. You don't have to go to these places and change each and every code block that you have written, but only go to your function and change that place only so that you can simply update your code. That is the advantage of having a single function. We will again try to understand this with this example. But if you can remember, last week we discussed about this while loop, which can iterate over an array and print each value inside an array. We can write a function for this as well. Simply we can do that so that we can provide any array to this function. Say function, then we need the array to be sent to this function, right? So we'll say $array, and then inside this we will going to have a common function, common operation here. So the operation is this. The change that we need here is, so in the condition part we had this. So the index should be inside this one, and then in the condition part we are going to count. Now here we can say whatever the array that passed to this parameter. So now the variable going to be $array. Okay, so here also we can change that $array, and then the while loop will going to continue. There is not going to be any change here. So this is it. So how can we call this function? You can simply pass that variable to your function. Now here you just need to call this function. Let's save it and try to run this. It will provide the same output. So you can clearly see the advantage of having a function. If I want to print another array in this same script, that is where you will find this function quite useful. I have another array. I have a subjects array like this. And if you want to print this one as well. You can again call the function you want. Here also you don't need to necessarily assign this to a variable, just call that function, because inside that function we have a print statement here, right? Here we already have the print statement, so we don't need to print it again. So since it has that print statement, we don't need to return anything from this function, because the function itself prints the value. Okay, so just we need to call this function print array. Just send you array to the subject. Let's try to run this. Okay, it will print the second array, right? So you can send any number of arrays to this function, so that it will print each and every array value using this function. Now, if you take a certain web application or a website, and if you want to register with that site, there is a common thing that we are using, the HTML forms, right? Where you can easily acquire user inputs. Now this example, right? If you can remember, now this is a simple example that we did. We wanted to find whether a given number is an odd number or an even number, and defining the number, we really what we did was we hard coded that value to this. But we can change this code to get the user inputs using these forms. So how can we do that? Okay, I'm going to get this same example. If you take forms, now forms, we have several controls in a form. Now we have a tag called text area. If you want to provide some kind of a lengthy description, then better to use a text area. And then you have, if you want to have a drop down, select type. Now in the W3 course, you can use this online editor also. Now I'm going to create a simple form. So I'm going to need some kind of an HTML structure here, right? That means we are going to embed PHP inside HTML code. So we need to close the PHP part with closing PHP tag, right? So I'm going to close this one and then start writing now HTML code here. Okay, so I'm going to say this part you're already familiar with. Okay, then we are going to have a form. So the form starts with a starting form tag. There are some attributes in this form. So the necessary attributes are these. The method attribute. We will discuss this. Initially, I'm going to say the method as post. There is another method called get method. And so mainly two types of method, post method and get method. We will discuss what's the difference. I will quickly explain the method post, and then we can provide action as well. So for this example, I'm going to need the user to enter a number, right? So I'm going to need a simple text tag for that. You can provide a label, say enter number. So you can ask the user to enter a certain number. And the input type is, we can say input type is, initially I will show you this text. There is a type called text, and definitely we are going to need this name attribute. I'm going to say now, let's say now. Okay, and then okay, this is it. This is our input tag, and then what we are going to need is a submit button. We need to have a submit button for this form. So let's say input type submit. Name is not really necessary here for the submit button, but we are going to need the value attribute. This is what is going to show on top of our button. So I'm going to say submit. This is going to be the value of our submit button. There is going to be a change in our PHP code here, but before that we will go and see what kind of an output this generate. Okay, just forget this part. Now we have a h1 tag, check or even, then we have a control where we can enter a number to this format. We have a submit button here, right? For now it's a text control, right? I can type numbers here, and also I can write text as well. But if I want to have only numbers, I can change this, the input type into number. There is an input type called number. When I click and I can write any number here, and here also it changed, right? Now I can have numbers here, but if I try to enter any letters here, text values, it will not accept. That is the advantage of having a number type. So that will going to save us a lot of time in having a validation as well. Okay, now our form is complete. Now let's see how we can accept the user input values from this form. So I'm going to have the same PHP code here. And our PHP code, this part will not going to change. The only thing that's going to change is the user input part. Like we need to now accept whatever the user input from this form. But since I'm having this action, form action in the same script, I first need to, initial thing is that I first need to check whether this form got submitted. Otherwise, it will provide errors. It will going to provide errors. Okay. Before going to explain that, I first comment out this thing. So this part is not going to execute. Initial thing that you need to understand here is in PHP, if you have a form and if you have the method as post, then the way that you can access the user input is it's like this. $num. We will take the user input to this variable $num equal. Then since the method is post method, we can say $_ post. Okay. Now this is a global variable in PHP, right? It can be accessed from anywhere. $_ post. This is how you are going to access the user input given with post method, and then $_ post, and then you need to have square brackets, and within square bracket, now here in this form, you have only one control that you are accepting, that is the num value. So you need to here, you need to mention as num. So this is how we are going to access the user input. As you can see, this $_ post, this is familiar to you in some way, right? if you can clearly see this is an array which hold key value pairs. I will show it to you, right? But first, now what I want to show you is first, if I try to run this, I will show you what happens. Okay, since I have given the action in the same script, in this same script, I could have given a separate file. But here what I wanted to show you is if I am going to, I can also give the same script like this. But there is a simple thing that you need to change. So what I have written here, I haven't checked anything, but I have access, I'm trying to access the user input. But if I try to run this, okay, I'm going to refresh this. Okay. Now what happens? It says notice undefined index now. Why? Because we haven't yet submit our form. We haven't submit our form. That is the thing. So it will show an error because it will try to anyway run the script from start to end. And it will first start to find this $post now. But it haven't received anything yet. But let's say if I enter some kind of a number here, 45, and then I submit this. If I'm going to print this, let's say echo $now, what would happen? Refresh this again, you find this error. And if I'm going to enter a number and submit, and now then it shows the number that the user has provided. Okay, if I say 67 and submit, and then it will again show the number. But initially what happens, before we try to submit the form and try to run this script, it shows an error, right? Now to avoid that kind of an error, we need to first check whether this array is set. For that, we have this array function called isSet. isSet, what it does is it will check whatever the array value that we are providing, whether that value is available or not. We can say if isSet, then paste here. We are going to check whether this num is set or not. After checking this, we can write anything that we want inside this condition. And now, if I'm going to run the script, now there will be not going to be any undefined error or anything. It will show the complete form here without any errors or anything. It will clearly show the form to you. And once I'm going to enter some kind of value and hit enter, then only it will execute the PHP code inside that. So that simple condition need to be checked. If you are going to execute if you're going to provide the action to the same script. So this post $_post array, what it does is it will create an array which holds key value pairs. If I'm going to print an array, other than using print R function, there is a function called var_dump function. I'm going to say var_dump, then your $_post array, right? Let's print this. So I'm going to enter some value and then click submit. Then here you can see, right? This is an array. It's an array. This $_post is an array where you have your input name as the array key, and array value will be the whatever the things the user entered inside that input control. If you had number of controls inside your form, it will have all that key value pairs inside this $_post array. Now I don't have to hard code any value here. Just copy this part where we check on whether a number is an odd number or an even number. That should also come inside this if statement, and there is going to be another if statement inside that. So now what it does is it will take whatever the user input to this $num, and then this is the same thing. We check whether it's divided by 2, and if so, then we will going to print that number is an even number, otherwise it will print that number is an odd number. This is it. So let's save this and run. Okay, I'm going to this page, and then I'm going to enter a number. I can't enter any text here because it's a number field. So I need to definitely enter some kind of a number here. Let's say 89, and then I'm going to click submit. Then in the same page, it will show the output. 89 is an odd number. Now here, I will show you the difference between the get and post method. We can also check that as well. I just change here the method as get. If I'm going to run this, let's see what will happen. Now if I enter a certain number and if I'm going to submit this, right, get method is visible to everyone because it sends the values in the URL. But post method, it's not the same. It will send the values in a HTTP post request. That is the difference. So now when it comes to database, okay, now just like in Python, what you did was you created some kind of a database and you did different database manipulations. There was a question asking whether we can use a $_post submit to check whether the form is submitted or not. Yes, but for that you need to change the code like this. Now here for the submit button, I just give the attributes type and the value. In your case, if you want to check with the submit button, you need to definitely have a name attribute for this submit button. Saying name sub, let's say sub. Okay, if I just comment this out, then let's say I'm going to say Radha on this case. Right? Now, if you can remember previous array, we only had our $_post array. We only had this the number value. Now here we have two array values, number and sub. This is our submit bar. So we can check that as well, right? So for that, we need to say if is set $_post sub. $_post, this should be post. Right. Now if I'm going to submit here, it will work the same way, right? So for that, you need to have this name attribute to your submit button. That's how it works. We will going to create a database. We can, since we have installed SAM, we have this database management tool that is phpmyadmin that comes bundled with our SAM software. So we can say localhost / phpmyadmin. Now here it will provide this simple user interface where you can create any database without providing any, without running any SQL scripts. You can simply create a database here. In PHP, if you can remember in Python, In order to work with databases, you had to install a MySQL driver, right? Now, it's not going to be like that in PHP. In PHP, you don't have to separately install the MySQL driver. So in order to build relationship from our PHP script to the database that we are creating here, then we need to have some kind of an interface. So that is where this extension called MySQLi comes in. Okay, if you can remember PHP manual, I was explaining last week that if you need to get any kind of a PHP function, then the best place that you need to check is the PHP manual. Now here you have MySQL I. Now this MySQLi, if you take, it is the improved version of MySQL. Why it is called improved version is because if you take MySQL, that was the MySQL driver that was there before PHP 5. So after PHP 5, what they did was this provide some kind of an improvement to MySQL driver where it will support both procedural and object-oriented concepts. And also in MySQLi, it will support prepared statements, something called this prepared statements. Prepared statements we need because in order to eliminate any MySQL injection attacks. You can further check these things on the internet so that you can get more knowledge into it. What are these MySQL injection and how you can eliminate it with these MySQL prepared statements. We call this PDO. So just check that as well. So first go to this location, localhost/phpmyadmin, and there you have this database tab. In the database, you create create a database called product. We have some kind of product names and product descriptions in that product table. I'm going to say db_products and click create. So you can see there didn't want to run any SQL statement, just using the interface I created the database. And here you provide a table name. Let's say tbl_product. Okay, this is my product table, and I have I only have 3 columns, right? Then click go button, and now first thing that you need to provide is the index. So let's say p_id. Better if you can give a clear name, but for now I'm giving this as PID. It is to store the ID of my product. So that will going to be an integer, and that is my if I want to make it as the primary key, I can simply say index primary. So here it will going to have some kind of pop-up. I just say click go, and it will create the primary key, and I'm going to make it as an auto incremented value, where each and every time you add some kind of a value to that table, it will have this column as an auto incremented value. Starting from 1, it will increment the value. So this checkbox you need to click here. It will make it as an auto incremented column. And then PID, then P name. This will be my product name column. So this is going to be a varchar, data type is varchar, If you are going to name it as a varchar type, you need to definitely have a length. So I'm going to say 30. Then finally we need the description. Let's see, that's also a varchar, and I'm going to give some larger, let's say 100. So this is it. These are your columns in your table. So you need to provide the data type and the data length. That's it. I'm going to save. Click save button, and then it will create a simple table here. This is our table structure. And if I'm going to click browse, there are no products yet inside this table.